Harry Truman begins an historic 3-day visit to Canada. At Rouse's Point, near the U.S.-Canadian border, dignitaries welcome the president to the Dominion. Mr. Truman will now be the guest of America's good neighbor to the north. Presidents Taft, Harding, and Franklin Roosevelt have come here informally before him. But this is the first full-scale state visit of a U.S. president to Canada. Newsmen cover the brief stopover before Mr. Truman's train continues on across the border. His visit fittingly coincides with the anniversary celebration of Prime Minister Mackenzie King's 20th year in office. 4.5 hours later, the train arrives in the capital city of Ottawa. It pulls into the Island Park station at the edge of town, used 8 years before for the arrival of King George VI and Queen Elizabeth. Governor General Viscount Alexander, Mr. Truman's official host, and Prime Minister Mackenzie King greet the president. Daughter Margaret and Mrs. Truman, for the first time, accompany the chief executive on a ceremonial trip outside the United States. On a sparkling spring day, the presidential procession, with Mr. Truman and Viscount Alexander in the lead car, drives along a 6-mile route. 40,000 cheer the motorcade. Before the government house, locally known as Rideau Hall, the president receives full military honors. Mr. Truman inspects the Guard of Honor with Viscount Alexander, one of Britain's great heroes of World War II. Soon after coming to Ottawa, following his appointment as Canada's Governor General, Alexander paid a state visit to the President in Washington. It is this visit that Mr. Truman is repaying now. In contrast to the wartime secrecy that attended President Roosevelt's visits to Canada, Mr. Truman's itinerary is well known, and large crowds are on hand to greet him everywhere. The party continues on its way along the capital's pleasant pathways toward the Houses of Parliament, where Mr. Truman witnessed the unveiling of portraits of Prime Minister Mackenzie King and Sir Robert Borden, Canada's Prime Minister during World War I. At Government House, official residence of the Governor General, the chief executive and his party are to spend their first night in Canada as guests of Lord and Lady Alexander. First, however, he begins a busy round of official ceremonies by honoring a Canadian officer, as Fleet Admiral William Leahy looks on. With Viscount Alexander, he leaves for a stroll through the residence grounds. Canada and the United States have enjoyed a century and a half of uninterrupted friendship across an unfortified border. Symbolizing this enduring amity, Mrs. Truman plants a Canadian hardwood sapling in the Government House yard. The President follows the First Lady by planting one himself. Next morning, crowds form before the United States Chancery, visited by Mr. Truman at the beginning of his second day in Canada. With the Prime Minister, the President strolls across the street to the Parliament buildings. Here he is to address the two houses, Commons and Senate, convening in joint session in his honor. Canadian law forbids the Governor-General, as personal representative of the King, to attend any session in Commons. So Viscount Alexander is to listen to the speech by radio. Harry Truman gets a thunderous ovation from the legislators. In a major speech, The President reaffirms the Truman doctrine of American foreign policy.
He intends to support those who are determined to govern themselves in their own way. And who honor the right of others to do likewise. We intend to cooperate actively and loyally with all who honestly seek, as we do, to build a better world in which mankind can live in peace and prosperity. We count Canada in the forefront of those who share these objectives and ideals. With such friends, we face the future unafraid.
Almost immediately after his speech, the busy president, keeping pace with a tight schedule, leaves with Prime Minister King. His address was greeted by 30 periods of desk-thumping applause. At its conclusion, the members rose to their feet to give him 3 cheers and a tiger. Now a new ovation from Canada's people follows as showers of paper rain down upon the presidential car. Harry Truman's destination is the National War Memorial in the center of Confederation Square. Dedicated to Canadians who fell in World War I, it is now to receive the homage of the chief executive of a neighboring nation whose own youth fought side by side with the men of Canada in 2 world wars. After a speech in which he said that America intends to aid those who seek to live in peace with their neighbors, and after pointing Canada out as a friend who shares our ideals and with whom we face the future unafraid, it is fitting that President Truman pay this tribute to an old ally. The men commemorated here gave their lives in a struggle for freedom from aggression and war. Since the Rush-Bagot Agreement of 1817 provided demilitarization of the Great Lakes, the American-Canadian frontier has been entirely free of armaments. Dedicated to a hopeful future and homage to a glorious past, the presidential procession drives on to a luncheon at the Chateau Laurier, given in Mr. Truman's honor by the Prime Minister and members of Parliament. Again, crowds cheer him on his way. In the afternoon, he is to move to the U.S. Embassy, where he will spend his second night in Canada. Next day, the last of his goodwill visit, the president holds a press conference at the Signory Club in Montebello, Quebec, where he is a guest of U.S. Ambassador Atherton. Speaking informally, he says that the United States wants only peace in the world and friendship with every nation in it. The President and the Prime Minister, also a guest of the U.S. Ambassador, strolled together. Then, after posing with Mackenzie King and autographing a photo for a Canadian Mountie, Mr. Truman leaves for Ottawa and his trip home. On the way, he drives in the rain to inspect Niagara Falls. The first official visit of a U.S. president to America's northern neighbor comes to an end. 3 busy days take their place in history, leaving behind a new link of friendship between the United States and Canada.